What grossed you out so much in a relationship that you just left? He bragged about how he screwed the family dog in the not so good way, or the worst way, and how he groomed his high school girlfriends just to cheat on them. Yet I was still shocked when he did the same thing to me. He's a Reddit user, and I freaking hope he sees this. I briefly dated a girl who never cleaned her adult toys. It was something I missed the first few times we were together due to lighting, but once I did, it was all I could do to not retch. I played it off like the batteries had died in it. Afterwards, I took a peek at the rest of her collection, and they were all the same, coated in her crustiness. It wasn't a missed spot here or there either. The stuff had residue peeling and flaking off in big chunks, looking like the walls in an abandoned house. As far as I could tell, she wasn't an otherwise dirty person either. Her place was well kept and clean, and every time we were together it was clear she had either just taken a shower, or we would take one together as part of our pre-game, so to speak. Then again, I have insomnia, so I can't smell most things. So maybe she just stank to hell and I just couldn't tell? Clean your toys, people. We were in one of many fights, and I told him I needed space, so we hadn't talked in maybe a day. I get a text from a random number saying it was his sister, and that he was in the hospital after a bad work accident. I ask which hospital, knowing that it was him texting me using a number app, lying about being injured, but you never know, maybe it's real. She tells me the name of the hospital and sends me a picture of just his legs, which are bruised, but they look like how his legs always looked. And then she says, this is the last picture they took of him before he was life-flighted to the hospital. She said he had severe head trauma, a cracked skull, and his back was likely broken in several places. So I called the hospital and asked if they had any patients by his name. They said no. I asked if anyone was life-flighted in the last few hours, and they said no. I blocked the number and went to sleep. A few days later, I got a text from another random number, claiming to be his brother. He sends me a selfie of him in a hospital gown, in an exam room, at a doctor's office. He looked totally normal, no cracked skull or broken back, and it was cute because the room was ocean-themed with crabs and fish on the walls. Anyways, the text said he was in the ICU, the crab room, and he had just woken up from a coma. Again, I ask which hospital, and the brother refuses to tell me, saying he'll be released within the hour, so there's no point in a visit. I know it makes me sound like a bad person for not believing him, but this man lied to me on several occasions, told me he'd been shot, stabbed, poisoned. Also, his wife passed away, and he told me two very different stories about how she died, which led me to believe he might have had something to do with it. So many red flags, and my mentally ill self was naive and lonely at the time in my life. Granted, this was a breaking point for me, and I dove headfirst into therapy and never looked back. I dated a girl for a while. Always seemed really well put together. Nice clothes, hair, and makeup. We usually hooked up at my place. Went to her apartment once. Oh, the smell when she opened the door should have been enough. There were dirty diapers, overflowing trash cans in every room of the house. There was a super small walkway through the mounds of dirty clothes to the bathroom. And to make it worse, there were paper plates on top of the mountain of dirty dishes in the sink. She proudly pointed out a moldy dish and said it was from when she cooked dinner for the two of our mutual friends 3 months prior. I noped the hell out of there. I'm late to the party, but there was a guy in my social circle that I had crazy naughty tension with. Nothing happened for the longest time. Then one day we bumped into each other in the city, had a few drinks, and the tension was unbearable, and we went back to his place. An aside, I've never had that kind of casual naughties before. I'm the sort of person who needs to be in a relationship, but the chemistry with him was so intense he was an exception. When we get to his place, tearing each other's clothes off. He lies me down on the bed, pulls my panties off, sees my vajayjay for the first time. And you wanna know what he freaking said? He breathlessly said, "Oh my god, you look like a little girl. You're perfect." What the fuck? I didn't know what to say except wait and sort of pushed him away from me. He was confused, and I wasn't about to explain. I called a cab home, and it was exceptionally awkward. When she doted on my kids as though they were ours, but treated hers like they were no longer existed or mattered. Those were massive red flags. I was so happy to get out of that relationship, but years later I feel pretty badly for her kids and pray everything turned out well for him.
Oh yeah, there was this swastika I found under her left tit. I'm sure that's a red flag somewhere in the book.
He was on trial for manslaughter, and I didn't know until he was found guilty. He kept trying to call me from jail. Edit, it was kidnapping and manslaughter, but he was only found guilty of kidnapping. She was jealous of me spending time with my sister, and implied our relationship wasn't normal. I was so grossed out by the implication and dumped her the next best day. My ex used to say constantly that she wanted to be inside my skin. It was her way of saying she desired me, but it was freaking weird and off-putting. So I asked her to stop, and she couldn't understand what was so uncomfortable about what she was saying. Pretty soon after that, I went on a week-long trip, and 3 days into it, she called and told me the whole time I've been gone, she's wanted to cheat on me. She then asked if she could see other people while I'm gone, and then I broke up with her pretty much instantaneously. If you're enjoying today's video, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment with your own stories or thoughts on the stories down below. Now let's keep going. It was 2 separate incidents, but long story short, one night she got super drunk at my sister-in-law's house. After spilling a second glass of red wine onto my sister-in-law's white carpet, we opted to move her glass further away from the edge of the table. As soon as we left, she screamed like full-fledged raged at me for not defending her. The very next time we were together, she got drunk again and accused me of trying to cheat on her. I've never cheated on anyone. And she threw her purse at me. I let things calm down and explained to her that I grew up in a house chock full of domestic violence, and that was a fine line in the sand. And for that reason, I was out. He showed me, with excitement, a box of things he had been collecting from me without my knowledge. This included strands of my hair taped up neatly, bobby pins and hairpins I had in prom, my fingerprints and saliva sample that he took out of the trash from our forensics class experiments. He thought this was a romantic gesture or something, but it made me really realize how creepy and obsessive he is. He is also very controlling and got jealous and mad at me for hanging out with my sister, spending time on my laptop with my dog, and he also admitted to me that he stalked my Facebook interests to pretend he knew what I liked, researching the games and played the music. I listened to it so we could bring it up in conversation. He was a total psycho. I showered at his place after staying over, and I asked for a towel. He gave me one which had literal skin flakes on it. I asked for a clean one. He asked what I meant. He did not realize that you need to wash towels because they just have water on them, so they clean themselves. Gonna be honest, I expected more booger eating and less donkey fucking and chemo shaming in here. Gonna have to process some of this. My ex would threaten self-termination anytime things got tough in our relationship. It grossed me out enough that I just called it a day eventually. Cue the desperate call hours later from the apparent overdose. She's still alive and kicking though. He had berated me for something silly, and he was still angry. When I got home, he wanted naughties. I wanted to read. He pressured me. I still said no. He got angry and raised his fist to hit me. I just looked at him. He lowered his fist. I then left immediately. I haven't seen him since. It's been a decade. Junior year in high school, I got a girlfriend for the first time. She was popular, beautiful, and out of my league. She took my virginity, and I was crazy about her. The more I got to know her on a personal level, the more I believed that she wasn't that great of a person. Her family was beyond obnoxious, but a small price to pay for a horny teenager. About 6 to 7 months into the relationship, I had dinner with her family at the house. She insisted her older brother tell me about this hilarious story. He goes on about how after gym class one day, he was left alone with a mentally handicapped student. He tied him up with a volleyball net and left him stranded in the gymnasium screaming. The entire family was howling, laughing, listening to this. And then I broke up with her a couple days later. My mom passed away just weeks before, and I was tired as heck, exhausted and in a traumatic phase of grief after a year of cancer treatments, and all the fuss of being there for a cancer battle. The woman I was seeing told me
I need to get over it and can't just be alone inside all the time.
I never spoke to her again. Went through my phases of grief and have been a resource to people in my life that are going through similar loss since then. Grief takes time or it doesn't. It's different for everyone. I have told this story about a dozen times on Reddit. The first night I slept at my ex's apartment, I woke up in the middle of a night to an extremely loud scraping noise. It was inside my ear. A roach had crawled into my ear and was scraping against my eardrums with its legs, antennas, or whatever. It was the most awful feeling I've ever experienced. I used tweezers to try and get it out, and when I pulled them out after a few times, only half the roach came out. I had to go to the ER to get the rest of it out and get antibiotics. I had a horrible ear infection for a couple of weeks. The worst part was her saying, "It happens to my son all the time." Like, what the frick? Found out she had wrappers and trash under her bed. Like, clean your freaking house. It has literally haunted me and given me PTSD. When I'm sleeping, if I hear the slightest noise, I jump up and swat uncontrollably around my head and ears. My wife was shocked as heck the first time I did it when we were dating, but since I told her, she fully understands. I found out my girlfriend had several fake social media accounts she would use to bully strangers and harass women she knew, including my ex-wife. Instant dump. I went away with my ex and saw his toothbrush for the first time. It had black mold growing on it, and the bristles were so flat that the toothbrush had a middle parting. I had a conversation with him about hygiene and told him to get a new toothbrush, but when I stayed at his house 2 weeks later, the cursed toothbrush was still there, so I ended it. He cried if I didn't have the naughties with him, needing to be touching me constantly, and eventually threatening to off himself when I tried to break up with him. The guy texted and called for about 5 years afterwards. We only dated for 2 months at most. I was dating someone for a month, and things were going well. Then there were a couple of weekends where they were just acting weird and distant. Things started to get back on track. They started really pestering me about what I was going to do when I celebrate my birthday, and didn't listen to me at all when I said that I usually get a dessert and call it a day. He started saying that was unacceptable and that I should celebrate my birthday. He planned out a whole birthday weekend getaway at a nearby location, and I started to get excited because I felt special. Anyways, my birthday was on a Monday. He conveniently called on Thursday to cancel, not to reschedule because he would be working from Friday to Tuesday. Right. He had never worked weekends before, but it was kind of believable because he was the commercial contractor. He sent me texts over the weekends, supporting to be working, and sent pictures of him working, I guess to be proof. I checked the metadata on the pics and they were taken a year earlier. Yeah, that was the end of that. Why would you push for something that you had no intention of following through with? I had said this many times. I was content with the way I celebrated my birthday, and it wasn't a big deal. I was confused and just overall disgusted, and I couldn't look at that person the same. We went to a restaurant. Nothing fancy, mind you. She's treated the server like absolute garbage, as though she was royalty and the server was the help. Yeah, that was it for me. I suddenly had zero interest in her. The kicker was, she was a waitress. Shit you not. She was looking at clothes in the mall. If she pulled something off the display and didn't like it, she would just toss it on the ground. What?
Someone gets paid to put it back.
I was dating a girl when I was younger. She seemed nice, and she had 2 small cats. One weekend I went to visit her and the cats weren't there. I asked her where they were, and she told me that they'd gotten annoying, so she put them in the car and drove them to an abandoned bush and left them. I faked an emergency at home. We lived about a 2-hour drive apart. Left and broke up with her when I got home. Thank you all for watching today's video. I hope you all enjoyed the stories I had for you. Remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And hey, I've got a comic dub channel now up, so if you want to, go check that out. Things are going quite well over there. See you next time. Hasta la pasta.